Viking metal is a sad parody of music. In fact, I think it's ruining metal. It should probably crawl off into a corner and just die. Or have you been missing out on Viking-influenced music just through your own stupid snobbery, you twat? In this episode of Beat Motel, we're going to get into it. But first... You're listening to the Beat Motel podcast, and we need to warn you that we like to use words like fuck, shit, and syndicalist, butty scrotix, angry flap, and biscuits. Welcome back to Beat Motel. We've had a little bit of a break, and we've had a bit of a rejig. In fact, I kind of had a little mess around with the disclaimer there. I didn't.
It even sounds like we got a budget.
It sounds like we've got a budget. Do you like the little kind of wibbly tape effect at the end?
Yeah. Expensive, man.
Expensive. It cost literally pennies, which is more than I can afford, quite frankly. So we're changing the format up. If anyone who's been listening to this before, you might hate this, and we're sorry to see you go. But after 167 episodes or whatever it is, we decided
off your fuck.
Off your fuck. We decided we should probably have a format that actually is a bit more like a podcast rather than two middle-aged men getting confused and spending loads of time looking stuff up on Wikipedia whilst recording themselves.
Yeah, we've looked up Wikipedia. We've spent our time on Wikipedia before we record ourselves this time.
Yeah, yes, it's just a slight change, so you don't have to listen to or watch us do it, because we are, of course, three-dimensional on YouTube. It's not really three-dimensional, I suppose, is it? But
2D?
We are 2D in more ways than one, but we all need to get on with it. Sam, what is the theme this week that you're going to guide us through on a merry journey?
Well, I think it's Viking, the representations of Vikings in modern music, really, and wondering, did they sound anything like that? I think we had a really nice time a few weeks ago, about a month ago or something, looking at music from sort of from between the inter-World War period. And we sort of were surprised, I think, a little bit about how things actually went. So, we're going to look at Viking music and how it's represented. And this is a sort of a thing, written music that harkens to the Vikings. Is a thing that sort of goes back to
the Vikings.
Well, no, I would say actually it's only about 200 years old at this point.
What? Oh, yeah. Wow, okay. This is right, I'm already interested.
Yeah.
Lead me through.
So, who were the Vikings, Andrew?
Vikings were a bunch of lads and ladies from the Nordic countries. I've never been sure if it's just... No? Oh, no. Already wrong.
Finland... No, Finland wasn't part of it.
Well, they just stayed out of it. They were like...
No, apparently I've read somewhere that the Finns were like forest people and they were freaked out by it. There were a few...
freaked out by it? What do they do? Because...
Yeah. So it's like the forest is like full of magic and weird stuff that was going on, and this is very much part of the Viking world. It's like the world is alive. You're not alone. Humans are just one group of people in a world of spirits and all these other things and gods. And apparently the Finns sort of freaked the Vikings out.
Oh, the right. I got that the wrong way around. I thought you meant the Finns were scared by the Vikings, but no.
Oh, they're probably scared of. No. I think it's probably both ways.
Both ways, but so the Vikings were looking at the Finns and going, no, those guys are hardcore. It's like if you fly to.
They're living in the forest with that many mosquitoes. Fucking hell.
So Finland's the worst of both worlds. It's freezing cold and there's mosquitoes. It's like, come on. So. That's really interesting already. Now, a question I had. Now, I've been making Viking videos on TikTok, and they've had millions of views, but that just goes to show you haven't got to know what you're talking about to be on TikTok. So I get corrected quite a lot, quite rightly, because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, and I'm not an academic and you are. Somebody, a complaint that I get quite often for my stupid Viking poo videos is that people point out that just because somebody lived in... We haven't actually said which countries. That doesn't mean they're a Viking. The Vikings were just like the warrior caste.
Oh, sort of. They weren't even a warrior caste. They were like... So the Vikings were like roughly between 750 and 1050, and after Christ rather than before Christ. And they were in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland eventually, obviously, because they and a few and the other islands that they sort of settled in and so on in the north, way in the north. They didn't really. Some of them found their way to like nicer sort of climates, like in Turkey and stuff, but they never really found they don't seem to. And then a lot of them settled in like nice places around, northern France and stuff. Um, that's Normans are Northmen, um, and
So they are
yeah,
Vikings that just came all the way down and they became Normans. And
yeah,
is it true that the Saxons, who are Germany-ish,
German, yeah,
so they
German
were also
tribes.
Vikings? I mean, how many Viking mummies and daddies must have loved each other very much to be punting out that many Vikings to spread them that far?
Well, yeah, I mean, they were explorers basically, but to go Viking, basically, if it's more like, as far as I can figure it, Viking was more like a summer job.
So, so all the kids at university, kind of at Cambridge and Oxford, kind of going off for a summer job.
Yeah, yeah. And if anybody wants a really good representation of what it was like in the Viking Age, I would recommend Eric the Viking, um, the film. It's fantastic.
I've
Do you
not,
know
not
it?
heard of that. No, I thought you were going to say I recommend anyone who wants a kind of good idea of what Vikings summer jobs were. Just go and look at all the people on the punts. I nearly said a rude word then by reflex.
Yeah.
On the punts, just go and look at the punts in Cambridge.
Yes. Um, so yeah, like to go Viking was more to go pirating, basically. You go raping and pillaging and enslaving, and essentially the Viking sort of world was a slaving world, uh, and there's something I haven't done enough history to do um, to get the accuracy, but there's something to do with the word Slav and the word slave.
No way. So,
Yeah.
so Slavic. So what are the Slavic countries?
With Russia, Slovenia, and some Eastern European ones. I'm not entirely sure. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia don't consider themselves
Oh,
Slavic.
oh, really? But the Viking. How did the Vikings not go there? They must have.
They did. They had settlements all around, like what's that? The capital of Kiev or Kiev, however people are pronouncing it in the English world these days. Frankly, that was I think, if my memory serves correctly, that was a Viking settlement.
That's a long way from Viking land.
Yeah,
Considering.
they were the first Europeans to hit, America. It's established, it's accepted now. They were the first Europeans to get to America.
Leif Erikson, is that the? There was a band called Leif Erikson for a while, wasn't there?
Isn't that and Bluetooth is named after a Viking as well, and yeah, um, yeah. But so you said, they were men, and they were mostly men. Apparently, politics was very much the realm of men, but we don't. But because we say men, we don't necessarily know how gender worked in the Viking Age. And this is something I found really. I've been reading this book by a guy called Neil Price. I think that's his name. Anyway, yeah. Um, and he said that so it's quite confusing when you get to the gods about how gender works. So Odin, the big Zeus's Jupiter type fellow, um, magic was considered the realm of the female. So, but he used, sort of female magic all the time, apparently. And yeah, and then Loki, the god of mischief for the Vikings, he got pregnant. So how does that work? If they adhere to like gender sort of categories that we in the West have sort of been leaning into, I guess, for like 100, 200 years at this point, doesn't really make sense to then that the Vikings actually saw it that way either. Um,
There are
so
there are several bits from my own research that I did that really sort of don't so much muddy the water around the role of gender, but some of the research I did came up with several really interesting facts about women. So women held on to their own wealth.
mm,
So if you got married in some other cultures around then, and not so much now, but your family would give you some wealth that would go to the husband. It would go to the male part, of the partnership. And you could then be offed, or they could get rid of you and they'd keep the money. Or if you died naturally, they kept the money. Whereas in Viking society, obviously not everywhere, just to get that really clear, we've already said that they spread a wide area. In Viking society, that's not how it happened. It stayed with the woman's side of society. And in some parts of Viking culture, if you're going to marry a woman, the dowry was the other way round.
Yeah.
So for safety, almost as a safety net, the bloke side of it, because obviously all these partnerships is between tribes, and it's about land and commerce, and that goes, that went right on into Tudor period and beyond. So by the male side of the partnership having to pay the dowry to the female family, it's like a safety, it's like an insurance policy. If they're investing in getting a wife, they're probably not going to be terrible to them, because Viking women could divorce men, and they only had to do it in 3 steps. So the first step was they had to be in bed with their husband, and they had to say, I want a divorce. I imagine that's probably how it still works. I want a divorce. Then they had to stand on the threshold of their house and basically shout out the front door, I want a divorce. And if people heard it, they then had to go to kind of like a town meeting and say in front of the whole town, I want a divorce. And that was it. And they could divorce men for any reason. There's records. I say records in quote marks, because a lot of this stuff's oral history and passed down, only written down 300 or 400 years after it might have happened. But there was women who divorced men because they didn't like their hairy chests. Hairy chests were not a popular thing, apparently, in Vikings' time. I thought they'd be all gnarly and like wearing a duvet on their chest, but apparently women did not like that. They preferred slightly more effeminate men.
Well, that would explain all the long hair.
And yes, right. Sorry, I took you on a sidetrack there. It's supposed to be a Dr. Sam led episode.
No, I like it. We're wildly off my script, but I'm happy with that. So Neil Price, Professor Neil Price, who's at Uppsala in a university in Sweden. He's the source of a lot of the information I'm talking about today. Not all of it. For instance, the Slav thing I found on etymology.online.com. It comes from the 13th century, which is like not that long after. Originally Slav, so used in this secondary sense because of many of the Slavs sold into slavery by conquering people, which would be a lot of Vikings, essentially, would be doing a lot of the slaving. And this sort of leads this sort of thing of like, because this was quite a big slave economy, you bring these people back and they work your farm and so on and so forth, and that slave relationship probably wasn't the same as sort of the slave relationship because slaves in Rome were slightly different relationship with their masters. Slaves in Vikings,
Romans, they kind of had status.
Yeah, some could have.
It wasn't the lowest of the low. It is almost it's almost a career path. That's going to potentially be one of those comments that makes me really unpopular. But
in the Ottoman Empire, during the Ottoman Empire, the second most powerful person for a long part of it was a slave from their Eastern European lands, and the idea was that you take this person and you give them a lot of power. And because you don't change them, but you sort of you don't change them, their people will still sort of go, well, we are valid within the empire. So they're less likely to revolt if they think one of their own has at least got some power within it. So. To go Viking it is that sort of seafaring thing. It's they're pirates that go back to our thing, and then so the historical record is sketchy. We should say it first as well, because
anyone who's listened to Beat Motel would know that any of our facts are slightly sketchy. But this time we've actually tried to get it close.
So the Vikings didn't write about themselves and like they didn't write history.
Too busy. Yeah. You don't get all the way to Kiev, if you're spending time sat around tapping your chin with a Bic biro and writing down your history.
there's like a selection of writing from Iceland, um, but most of the history, most of what we know of actual like Viking day-to-day life comes from Arab visitors, Muslim.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
uh,
can't remember the guy's name. It's a really particular name that a lot of this comes from.
yeah. I think we'll hit upon yeah, and a bit of it comes from Latin sources. So people would write about one of the reasons the Vikings were so feared is because a lot of the stuff that was written about them was written about by priests who were the only people who could write at the time, and monks who, because the Vikings were not Christians, and so they were going and raiding their places and destroying everything. Like Lind's farm, isn't it? Yeah, that's the first one, Lindisfarne.
That's the first big one. One of the first recorded incursions, and you have to think, what was it? Just Vikings going down the coast until they found a massive inlet or river? One of the first recorded incursions was in Ipswich. It's one of the ones, but again, the dates are well sketchy on any of these things. But
Mm.
the Vikings at this time did actually have an impact on. Well, actually, the architecture. I was about to say, I'm quite happy for this podcast for Beat Motel to get kind of. You're the academic one, I'm the curious one, but I really like this. So it did affect the architecture. So St David's Cathedral in Wales, one of the very few cathedrals that you can't see until you're pretty much right up next to it.
Oh,
Because it's sort of in a dip. It's hard to
yeah.
describe, and it hasn't got really tall towers. And it's because if you were that close to the sea and you built a bloody great big cathedral, and think, yeah, they did 1,000 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, yeah.
The Vikings were like, well, that looks interesting. Should we nip over there and have a look?
Oh, they look like they have money.
Yeah.
Um, what was the yeah? So Neil Price says the thing is that England, the UK, as we call it today, is not so far away from Denmark and Norway coasts. So what the difference was the Vikings very very well much the people who went Vikinging, I guess.
Vikinging. So is that
Uh,
an adjective? Is that an adjective? I'm not very good with English.
but it's an Old Norse word that we've sort of brutalized, and they would have known about the UK, and they would have been trading with the UK well before they came raiding it, and so yeah. But talking about raiding, should we see if our first choice has would sound like anything like the Vikings?
Okay, here's the first choice. Listeners, viewers, just for this one, I've set up the clips. Although interestingly, I've got a new method that means I didn't have to listen to them all. I've just prepared them.
Oh,
So it's a bit like I never watched them, but the COVID briefings where Boris Johnson would say, "Mr. Whitty, could you put on the next slide, please?" First choice is this. Okay, so people who are watching instead of just listening may have noticed a bit of a development there in the way we present things.
budget. We've got a budget.
I didn't actually tell Dr. Sam we were going to do that, but there's video now. If you watch on YouTube, there was a bit of video there. So who was that? And describe what happened in the video for the people who are audio only.
Well, you're more likely to know who was actually performing that, but it was Richard Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries.
Is his first name really Richard? Doesn't seem like a...
Bobby, Bob,
I know
Bobby
Wagner.
Vaggy, Bobby,
Bobby.
Bobby Wagner. Do you think that's what the Vikings would have sounded like?
No, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest at all. I cannot imagine that they had anything that sounded that big. I don't know much about whether the Vikings actually liked music. I mean, most cultures throughout history have some sort of rudimentary method for making music. But if it was Vikings, I'd imagine it wouldn't be a string section. I imagine it'd be a flute made out of a hollowed out thigh bone of an enemy, or
I think that's more likely, yeah. So that was like written. That was written. Oh, the music is from around 1876, and
it's about 1,000 years after the Vikings.
yeah, and it was part of a revival from so sort of Germanic, the sort of Germans and the Danes and the Swedes, and there was a craze for the Vikings during the Victorian period generally. And there was some, and this is really part of it. It has no, like, this is where basically, the armor-plated breastplate, big horn helmet stuff comes from, really, rather than any historical record. And so a lot of the ideas that we have of the Vikings really start, around this period, rather than the historical record. The
So
historical, yeah.
what's the motivation? Why would Germanic people aggrandize the Vikings, or why would they make them, I don't know, lift them up or create this mythology around them?
Well, so we're talking about like 1850, after 1850s, around 1850, 1848. There's a thing called the summer or the Spring of Nations, and basically there's series of popular revolts around Europe, people trying to establish nations in place of the empires that are there. And so you have another revolution in Paris. God knows how many they've had by that point.
They like them.
They like him, and you have it in. I think there's one in, there's one in Budapest. There's probably one in Vienna. It's all over Europe. I haven't done enough reading to do it justice. It's a really interesting sort of point. But the Victorian period is also like the birth of the concept of the nation. And
That blows my mind that previously the nations weren't really a thing. And I don't know if it's just growing up British, because Britain, it's very easy as a kid. You look at the island and go, that's a country. And then even to this day, as a 50-year-old man, I look at borders in Europe and I think, how the hell did they decide on those? I mean, Switzerland, you've got some fucking great big mountains, and Italy, to a certain extent, they're basically is an island, but it's separated by a mountain range instead of the sea. But other nations, how was that carved up? Because Russia and Germany were sort of one big thing that got sliced, and the Germanic people were I've never figured out where the Prussians end and the Germans start, or whether it's different time periods rather than different people.
it's all like language based, mostly language based.
Okay.
And like there's a little bit of culture. So like in the place where I live, Finland, as far as I can figure it out, because there isn't that much in English to read, and I can't, for my sins, can't read Finnish well enough. But as far as I can figure out, Finland was basically the eastern Sweden, eastern part of the eastern Swedish.
So that's why everything's in. I've been coming to visit you in Helsinki for years, but only this time I realised a lot of things are written in Finnish and Swedish, which really fucked me up at the bus stop, because electronic bus stop, the name for the part of Finland Helsinki I was going to is completely different in Finnish and Swedish. They're not even close.
Yeah, so it's the Swedish is now another official language of Finland, and there are quite a lot of Swedish first language speakers, and but when there was a war and the Russian Empire took over what is now Finland, but for some reason the Russian Empire, the emperor was feeling a bit relaxed, and he was convinced to let them continue, to sort of start developing this emphasis on Finnish. And so, because the Finns were sort of, well, if not Swedish, and we're not Russian, it fits into their own sort of concept of It's like there is a nation there, and so you have all these different language groups who have enough relationship in that linguistic sort of
See,
group.
I almost see the Nordic countries as quite a lot more defined than a lot of Europe. I said about Italy being separated by the Alps. I would think that were geography differently, I mean, the physical land masses were different. You know, the Romans got as far as Scotland and went, well, fuck this, it's too cold. But I can't see why the Russians would get to Finland and go, fuck this, it's too cold, because they've got Siberia. They've got just as much cold shit.
Yeah.
It must just, if you're going to move and occupy somewhere, you think how many people you have to move to keep a nation subjugated. It could be, I wonder if it's that the Russians were like, it's just too much manpower. Just let the Finns, it's ours, we'll have the natural resources, thank you very much. But in terms of culture and stuff, just, it's not worth it.
The only natural resource here is trees.
Trees? Well, no, you say that. That is a valuable natural resource. That's allegedly part of the reason when Leif Erikson and the Vikings went to North America, they landed in a bit where there wasn't very many trees. And they're like, well, we've got no real reason to stay here because... Yeah, their currency, you need a lot of wood to build huts and build ships and maintain yourselves. There's plenty of animals, but just not much else.
So to go back to this thing of...
Oh, yeah, we're talking about music, aren't we?
Yeah. So there was this sort of like people searching for their history or something romantic, basically. This is the romantic period, and
the horns and the breastplates. And
you can romanticize like it happened. The last Vikings died out like 800 years beforehand. You can start to romanticize them. Their reality isn't real, and they hark back to this sort of time of power, and the memory is still there, but it's not necessarily
decentralized power. Like some fascist dictators Second World War, which are talking about creating another Roman Empire or something like the Roman. That was a big centralized power base. The same with Victorians and blah 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 blah. But the Vikings, as far as I'm understanding, there was no big mass central metropolis that was controlling the entire empire. It was basically people going out having a Viking, doing a Vikinging. Were like, well, we've landed somewhere. There's loads of cool shit. Let's live here. I don't think they were they paying taxes back to a central authority?
Yeah, there were
okay.
There were kingdoms, and there were sort of at one point all of it was, I think, pretty much run by one person, very briefly, for like 5 years, but including
shit, that is very brief for a 250-year kind of period.
Yeah, but there was one point where the whole of the UK was part of a Viking empire.
Danelaw.
No, the whole of the UK. That's just the north part.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, should we go on to the next one?
Next
Let's find
out.
Is this one going to be the Viking sound? Let's find out.
It's a bit of a delay, isn't it? Oh, here we go. Now I try to be balanced on these things, and it's not very often I hear something and say just like,
no, Sam, no, that's wrong.
But that's shit. The video is like not. I just Slash on a mountaintop with a guitar just kind of works for some reason. I don't know why. It's ridiculous. But a couple of lads with shaved heads. Were they AI or were they real?
They were real.
They were real.
Yeah, like I didn't catch that. It basically it's supposed to be themed around the single is the release. It's Immigrant song originally by Led Zeppelin, of course.
The Led Zeppelins, yeah.
I thought it'd be more fun to go with Harp Twins as cover, and they are I think they're American. Are they American or?
I know there's two instruments thing. So there's two cellos as well. Who do
two harps.
Two harps.
There's the Harp Twins.
Two nose flutes.
Camille and Kennelly K. Kit.
What? What's her name?
There's Camille Carey and Kennelly K. Kit.
Now,
American. They're
K.
American.
K. Kit is you're misspelling. So a lot of American names are misspelt because people got to Ellis Island and the people at Ellis Island went, we don't know how to spell that. So I reckon that should have been Kit Kat. But if your surname's Kit Kat and that magical moment comes when you have a child and you have to name them and you go, I want as much alliteration as possible, then she meets someone else who like doubles that alliteration.
I think Kit Kat's quite a good name for twins. This is Kit, this is Kat.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, surely it'd be quadruplets, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, but basically...
Give yourself a break. Give yourself a Kit Kat.
So do you think this is what the Vikings sound like?
I hate to say it, but possibly a little closer. I don't know about harps, because harps fucking complicated things. You know, if you're dealing with strings and you got to tune them and all that shit, I can't imagine they would have had that sort of high tensile metal for the strings. Drums, I mean, good God, what is a drum? It's hitting one thing with another, and having raised a child, there's a period when your child's about 2 or 3 years old that you learn what every single fucking thing in your house sounds like when it's hit against every single fucking other thing in your house. So drums, I could see drums. I don't know if you'd want to cart them up to a mountaintop though in the snow.
Yeah, and also like I'm not sure. Like the representation there, the video is quite. You need to see the video. I would say anybody who's listening to it, go and look up the video. Harp Twins immigration song. You need to see it. It's leaning heavily into sort of like Nordic romanticism stuff.
It's almost filth, to be honest.
Yeah. It must have been so cold when they filmed that, though.
There's such a thing around Viking sexiness.
Yeah.
And I think if you're British, it's almost quite embedded. So this is my own stupid brain working here. I don't like being too far from the coast because I feel claustrophobic. I lived by the coast, and my mum had her DNA done on one of those probably quite sketchy things where you send them some flobber and they tell you something or other. And she's 80% Scandinavian, so I must be a certain percentage Scandinavian. I think my Viking blood panics if I get too far from the coast. But the Viking sexiness thing,
you carried that out as well.
Pardon?
You carry the brass nipple tassels that you have to protect your.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all part of the thing. It's been a solemn tradition handed down from mother to child in my family, and shitting outside in buckets. So you mentioned an Arabian scholar or traveller earlier, and his name is Ahmed. I'm terrible at stuff like this. Ahmed Ibn Fadlan. So Ahmed AHMAD space IBN lowercase, interestingly, space FADLAN. So he's the traveller who you mentioned earlier. Although there's loads of Arabic.
The one I'm talking about later is a different chap.
Oh, shall I hold off on that then? If you're going to
no. Let's
So he wrote that they were. It all came all the way from Baghdad. That's a hell of a journey, isn't it? But he wrote that British women very much liked the Vikings. He wrote that the Vikings had an unfair advantage over the locals because they did things like wash and did things like braid their hair and colour their hair, and they actually kind of looked after themselves. And one of the things that I find bizarre, so this guy, he writes quite a lot about the Vikings, and he's not aggrandizing them. My take on it is that he's kind of mocking them almost. Or sort of, he still calls them like filthy. And, you know, if this guy, Ibn Fadlan, was a Muslim, then there's certain parts of ritual around cleaning and whatever. And so, but this thing of going, the British women didn't half like him. And then there's John of Wallingford. I've looked this up before. I've made videos about this. Who also complained. He said the Vikings came over here and took our women. And you think, fuck's sake. Has there ever been a time in history where people weren't complaining about foreigners coming over in small boats and taking our stuff? Oh man, that'll be the National Front. That'll be the clip that the National Front. I had to delete one when we were talking about this before because all these nutters just came out of the woodwork. I was like, "Fuck you! I'm not giving you a platform." Right, sorry, I went off on a tangent there. So a bad Led Zeppelin
cover
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Although, do you know what? Interestingly, I can see a line. There's like a Venn diagram where there's some crossover between Dickie Wagner and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, yeah. I think there is some sort of
Jimmy Page, probably paraphrasing, or it might be apocryphal, but he said the reason guitar is such a powerful instrument is he can make more noise than an orchestra, which is, yeah, I'm not going with that, absolutely, but just not that version.
Should we go for more traditional rock next time? Let's try the next choice.
Okay, so this is I need to check what you put down next because I've uploaded them. I hope this is the right one. Yeah. I'm all over that. I'm all over that with the caveat that I don't know if this band is one of them new socialist idiots.
Well, this is what from sort of being used to sort of mythologize one's history. This is what we've sort of come down. I've got a few interesting things to say.
Need to say who it is.
This is Enslaved, and this is from the song 793. Do you know what 793 is?
It's way further down the street than Sandy Toksvik's house at number 73.
73.
There's an obscure 80s kids TV reference for you.
It's 793 is Lindisfarne.
Lindisfarne. 795.
Opposite 794. It's
Sorry.
the Lindisfarne. Yeah.
The Lindisfarne year.
It's the year that they raided Lindisfarne.
So Lindisfarne famously sung "Fog on the Tyne." "Fog on the Tyne is all mine, which is later covered by Paul Gascoigne.
This is a bit of the old Beat Motel coming back.
I'll shut up now. You tell us about Lindisfarne. That's fucking wild though. Where Enslaved from? What country is this band?
They're Norwegian. They're from 1991. So they're, I think.
Oh really?
The second wave. They've changed completely. They're like really not that sort of thing anymore. But they are. They're sort of considered Viking metal. A lot of their stuff is considered Viking metal.
I quite like that. I've not heard black metal from that period and liked it before ever. It's not ropey as hell. The track's really fucking long as well.
It's 16 minutes long. One YouTube commentator said it's the most Viking metal song ever.
Based on what judging criteria? What other videos
I
is
don't
he watching
know.
that score higher or
I don't
lower
know.
than that?
Maybe it just gives him the horn and he puts a helmet on it or something.
Pun intended.
Yeah. So this is Carl Spracken, a scholar of extreme metal, has written an Enslaved. Yeah, he's a academic. He's writing and working in England. Has written Enslaved of this period as seemingly having a connection with some, what he says, authentic pre-Christian or anti-Christian roots in Norway. It appears, to quote, it appears that they have some uncanny, unworldly connection to the ancient past and the ancient gods. So they're very good at evoking sort of like things, apparently. This is sort of him. He's talking about going to see them in Norway in the beginning of this book. And then he sort of brings it down a little bit. I like this. This is the good thing. It's like, this is the thing about, you think, this is the fun thing I think about representation and the history of representation, is that you're going, well, when did this start? And like this thing about the Vikings start, did it really start in 1050? Are these people sort of trying to keep the flame alive, as it were? It's like, and he goes on to say that they covered Led Zeppelin in the same concert, the song we talked about above, the immigrant song. And this is basically admitting that this is probably much more the source of where the interest of the Vikings take hold, more than anything like actual history.
So yes, so I mean, as much as I like black metal, but when there's long conversations about the topics and the lyrics, like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, surely it comes down to the clothes you wear on stage and the covers of your records. I mean, what else makes it Viking? Although there is an answer on one of your later choices, I think, so I might not pull at that thread too long.
Some people see this as like this thing of harking back to a romanticized pre-Christian, pre-industrial ideal. It makes me think then this is a modern version of William Morris and the arts and craft movement.
What, harking back to something that might not have existed. And
Yeah.
But did this band make pretty wallpaper?
Well, this is the 793. Enslaved 793 is the Strawberry Thief of the black metal world.
Strawberry Thief? What's that?
Look it up. It's like the most famous piece of William Morris's wallpaper.
Yeah, I know what you mean now, yeah.
Yeah. Spracken. So go back to Spracken. He says of Viking metal, it's perhaps a more authentic expression than the satanic stuff that came around in the first wave. But it's based on a simplistic hegemonic masculinity as well as being nationalistic and conservative.
I find that I cannot get my head around people making music that sound like that. I mean, were Enslaved? Were they? We have to say this in black metal. Were they sketchy or were they not?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, and they've grown up.
Oh, that does happen. That's happened with a whole bunch of bands like Emperor, another example. And,
yeah. I think they were at the beginning, and by 2014, members of Enslaved were commissioned by the Norwegian government to create a musical piece in celebration of the 200th anniversary of the Norwegian Constitution. So
wow.
they may have linked that far right scene, but I think they've grown up. And...
Who would Keir Starmer commission to celebrate 200 years of Bovril?
I don't know any young people playing music today.
Ed Sheeran, there you go.
Ed Sheeran, probably Ed Sheeran. Yeah. Yes.
Ed Sheeran's Bovril hit.
So it is the occasional thing about like the Nordic countries, and I'm going to include Finland in this version. It's like they do not shy away from their culture's enjoyment of heavy metal, and in a way that I remember buying an album and looking at this is back in the late 90s, I think, or early 2000s, buying an album, buying the CD, turning it over and saying, with funds helped by like the Swedish government or something like that. And it's like, that's so cool. Can you imagine extreme metal album coming out of the UK going funds from the British Art Council?
I hate to say it, but in Britain, people know you like metal. And I'm not going to start the whole Metallica argument again, but if I say, yeah, me too, and I say, what sort of bands do you like? If they say Metallica, Pantera, I tend to disregard them to a certain extent, and I'm going to leave that there for now. But the extreme side of things is sort of either, can I say, mocked, or people just kind of go, oh, really?
Yeah.
Because things you can't even mention the names. I was listening to loads of Meshuggah yesterday, like bits that I've never heard, and that band kind of has progressed, not massively. I mean, they've got the sound, but if I play anything like that amongst polite company, 99% of people, good friends, would just go no.
Yeah.
But in other countries, it's just so accepted. It's like there's a barrier people have to get through in the UK to kind of realise it's good music. It's not. I think a lot of it, when I grew up in the 80s, we used to talk about metal onions and about, why do we call them onions? Oh, because they always stink. And it was like a real parody of like metalers and what they were, and they're a bit filthy and dumb. And it's just the actual truth that I've seen in other countries, completely opposite. You and I sat down and broke bread with an academic at Tuska Festival. Who'd come there for the extreme metal. He was not a moron, and he smelled quite charming.
Should we try the next choice? Let's go to the next one. It's more along the same. So
Yeah.
we're saying it, yeah. Question first, but going back to the question,
Question?
Viking or not was enslaved?
I'm going to say no, even if they want it to be. I
Yeah.
don't know. If there is some sort of real link to the Vikings, I'm cautious about how that is used to beat a fascist drum.
So,
Say that.
um,
Not in all cases, just to be really clear.
so we're gonna decide that that's like the William Morris of enslaved, or the William Morris of black metal.
I love the sound, but yeah, in terms of kind of culturally, they are a big piece of wallpaper from Habitat.
Modern days, yeah, yeah.
That's a band who I've got friends who love this band, but I was talking about people not accepting metal and sort of mocking some of it. I mean, even within metal circles, this band is sneered about a bit, and for me, it's just because they just don't go hard enough. They're just not heavy enough. But who is it, and why did you choose it?
Amon Amarth, with the song was Twilight of the Thunder God, the Thunder God being Thor.
Twilight. So
Yeah.
like the vampire movie. Thor wasn't in that, was he?
I mean, so I've looking them up. It was quite fun to sort of read about how pissy people get about Amon Amarth.
They do. They really do.
It's like they're not Vikings. They're not Viking metal. It's like, and I really I have a lot of time. And I have a lot of time for the singer Johan Hegg. He said it basically says the lyrics are stories more akin to historical fantasy than anything else. I think the name comes from Tolkien as well. Um,
Oh, I've never made that connection before. Of course it does.
and he said something. Where have I put that? He said something along the lines of um, like yeah. Here we go. He said this is a quote from of Hegg. I can't imagine the Vikings were into metal at all, except for all the swords and stuff. And musically, I guess they only played those strange lip instruments or some bongos or whatever. So he's
Bonkers or
like,
whatever.
I really, Amon Amarth have never clicked with me, but I really like the attitude of going, you're just having some fun. This is ridiculous. Come on.
Exactly. I'd see them if I was at a festival. I'd absolutely see them.
Yeah. But
I
yeah,
looked this up. So Amon Amarth, it's the Elvish for Mount Doom,
yeah, there you go.
which is cool. We're talking about kind of Tolkien and that sort of influence. God, that's a whole nother episode, really. But Robert Plant's lyrics, a lot of Robert Plant's lyrics are Tolkien
Yeah.
and therefore Saxon stroke a little bit of Viking influence.
I mean, what Led Zeppelin unleashed, basically, like a lot of the sound of metal comes from Black Sabbath, but I would say a lot of the lyrical stuff comes from Led Zeppelin. So, this is from, again, Neil Price, who's the guy I'm taking a lot of stuff from, who's not talking about metal like Spracken is. He's just talking about the part of the Viking imagery today is a caricature of masculinity, the long-haired warrior, supposedly the ideal of manly behavior. This is matched in popular culture by an almost equally cliched image of a uniquely independent woman. It is therefore ironic that Viking age reality should embrace a true fluidity of gender. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. I have more time, having sort of looked into Amon Amarth, I have more time, I have to say, than I did to begin with. Going, yeah, I think they're fun, cool.
They are fun, and I mean that riff's good. The timing's good. It's good stuff. So, a friend of mine, my bandmate Rocky, went to go see him at Brixton Academy, and they have various stage setups. But you're getting a show I mean, which is one thing I like about metal. Metal is unafraid of giving you a show. If indies guys in tatty t-shirts stood round staring at their knees looking bored, then this kind of Viking metal's the total opposite. So they have a full-size, or sometimes have a full-size Viking ship on stage. Cool. The drummer set up on the deck of the ship. Cool. Various members clamber around the ship and perform parts from like the prow or the other bits. I'm not terribly hot on Viking bits. The eyes glow. I imagine smoke comes out the nostrils. All cool, all good. But the one thing that surprised my friend Rocky the most is the full-on Viking invasion on stage and pitched sword battle, which is cool. And there's a song called Shield. I wrote it down. Shield Wall, where they form a phalanx at the front of the stage. I mean, yeah, I'm down for that.
I'm gonna look. Yeah. I now I would actually go and pay to see them, even if I didn't. That sounds great. That's. I mean, but that's like Wagner shit, isn't it? It's
just cool. One night out. Like, what? Who's going to stand there going, "Oh no, I don't think they're true metal." Fuck off. Just enjoy people battering each other with swords. I have a friend who does it professionally. A guy called Phil McEwen, who I imagine might listen to this when he sees we put out a Viking thing, and he really knows his stuff. So, sorry, Phil.
Sorry.
He runs the VIP stage at Bloodstock each year. I like Phil, and he's also a professional corpse. He's one of a very small number of people who's been killed more than once on Game of Thrones. So he was filming earlier in the year that I don't know. I'm not up to date with Game of Thrones, but they're doing the prequel now, and he's one of the few people who's been killed twice. He looks like a Viking. And he's gone on stage with bands doing Viking shit, which is just cool. What a great thing to have on your CV.
So, yeah, cool. Shall we've decided. So, maybe Viking more Viking in spirit. I would say they don't take themselves too seriously. I can't imagine the Vikings took themselves too seriously. If Eric the Viking was anything to go by,
I need to see it. Isn't that Monty Python?
Yeah, it's Terry Jones direct. I love it. I think it's.
Seen it. I'll have to watch it.
It's got one of my favorite comments of it. They're on a boat, and there's a monk on the boat with them, and there's a storm, and he goes, and he's really worried, and he goes, "Why aren't you praying to your gods?" And they go, "Why would they care?"
Nice.
And
right.
that's one about So we've done the heavy metal stuff. Let's see what else the Vikings may have sounded like.
Okay. Did they sound a bit like this? So the whole sexy Viking thing, I've noticed a theme.
Well, I couldn't help but criticize this AI slop shit because they had this, comely looking Viking lady who was ready for war but didn't seem to actually have any muscles.
It's it's men who are in their 60s by the look of it, or have just had a really tough paper round. And then women who, look like they'd snap if there was a stiff breeze. And that's the cliche. I very much doubt you'd want to get in a scrap with a Viking woman who's like survived travelling around the world and
yeah. And who sort of has time to do like makeup and shit. So final quote from Neil Price is. At times, it can seem that the actual people, the Vikings, have almost disappeared under the cumulative freight they have been made to bear. And to me, basically all this shit that we've talked about really is referencing the fantasies of, and this is even, I would say this is true of even those sort of, sort of those Nordic, those Scandinavian nationalistic sort of uses of it. They're not they're referencing like some romanticized version of it rather than dealing with like the misery of the history. It was not a fun time to be around, I don't think. This
Vikings were riddled with worms.
Yeah.
As was everyone, to be fair, at that time. But we know specifically the Vikings were riddled with worms because of a massive fossilised turd that was found when Lloyd's Bank was being built in York.
Yeah.
More worms as well, so MAW, which is a type of worms that they get up through your body and go into the backs of your eyes and blind you. I mean, this is not a nice time to be alive.
Yeah. So should we turn to what they might have actually sounded like? Like what try and get a...
Sorry, I pressed play a bit quickly. Got a cheeky little look about him, hasn't he? Watch the video. If you're listening to this, watch on YouTube. That's almost slutty looks to camera there, which I've never seen someone with a harp knowingly look directly down the barrel of the lens of a camera and go, "You want it, baby."
So what Neil Price says is their music and songs are a mystery. While we have a few surviving instruments with tonal qualities that can be reconstructed, what the Vikings actually did with them is another matter entirely. As in, we don't have any songs that go back directly to them. We have no tuning. We don't even know how they tune their instruments. So that might have been the end of the story. But that thing that we just listened to is a thing called Nobilis Homilis, which is from around the 12th century, but it was only written in the 13th century. So we're talking 150, 250 years after the Vikings. But there is a researcher called Chichiro Toskamoto, who wrote a Viking thesis about Viking music at the University of Iceland, and it's online if anybody wants to look it up. It's really interesting. So if anybody was in the know, it would be her. I mean, she went to Iceland. She did the research. Basically, she tries to make an educated guess by saying what the Vikings, if we know what they didn't sound like, what's left.
That sounds quite broad to me.
Yeah, it's very broad, and she sort of concludes by saying, maybe.
Love that massive academic thing. The result is, I don't fucking know.
Yeah, but she does a lot of work. But the irony is, for all the Christianity of the black metal stuff, it's only through Christianity that we might have an idea of what they might have actually sounded like. So Nobilis Humilis, and then there's this polyphonic thing in the next video. If you want to play that,
here it comes. Oh, whoops! I didn't make.
How to do a Gymel in lower thirds.
I didn't choose a very good bit.
You shall begin with the unison or with the third, and then make thirds below each note of the melody.
Somebody listening to this might understand it. There's how you do a Gymel. Thirds. Oh god!
Oh, we got a bit.
I did tell you that, like, I thought I was being really clever that I'd found a way to prepare the clips without having heard them.
Hey, it worked 95%, and it was really fun actually. So that's a Gymel.
Gymel
or Gymel, whatever. It sounds like something out of, again, like Tolkienish.
Like Gimli.
Yeah, and that was singing that was very popular in the north of England, apparently.
That's interesting because there are still, until only very recently, there were still strong links between Scandinavia and Newcastle and Sunderland. They've only just stopped the ferry. There was still a really cheap ferry that you could go on between the two places.
And but caveat: the earliest use of Gymel seems to have been around the 14th century. The earliest notated Gymel survived from approximately 1430. There are some probable earlier examples that have been lost, and it's an English sort of musical form. So those are the two like suggestions. Now going back to the Arab scholars, there's a guy called Al-Tartushi. Al-Tartushi. He was amongst the Vikings. He got up amongst them, and he
They got right up him.
He described singing of the day as a sort of guttural humming and compared it to dogs barking. So I'm going to go out on a limb. And say that "Who Let the Dogs Out" is probably more accurate to Viking sounds than heavy metal.
That is a nice conclusion that I did not see coming. So going back to my original thing, is Viking metal... Give me your opinion, I'll give you my opinion. Is Viking-inspired metal sad, pathetic parody that's ruining metal... Sorry, no, Viking-inspired... Is Viking... Oh, God. Is Andrew unable to read simple words?
His own writing.
Is Viking-inspired music a sad, pathetic parody that's ruining metal and needs to crawl off into a corner and die? Or are you been overlooking Viking music through your own snobbery?
I think my conclusion is looking at comparing Amon Amarth to Enslaved. I've always been more of a death metal guy than a black metal guy, and I think the sense of humor wins it over for me. I spend much. What's that Viking film a few years ago that came out? Everybody was sort of a bit horny for. I'd much rather spend my time with Eric the Viking than I would with real Vikings.
I think my own snobbery probably many years ago did put me off anything Viking-inspired, but I'm just over it. I just want joy in this life, and quite frankly, given the choice between miserable black metal, and I prefer black metal to death metal, or Amon Amarth having every single person in Brixton Academy sit down and row in unison, I know which I'm choosing. I absolutely know which I'm choosing. So there you go. Thanks for listening. Go on.
Yeah, we should have had that song, I Am Sailing.
Nice. Right, everyone, thanks for listening. I say this is a new format that we've been talking about for a while. We published weekly for 2 or 3 years, and quite frankly, it's a bit much. And Sam and I could talk shit happily until the end of days, but this episode is a lot closer to our hearts in the way I think Sam and I actually talk when we discuss things, and hopefully it's been interesting. Hopefully it's been fascinating, and I'm going to lead the next one. We're going to kind of roughly take it in terms. So the next episode is... I don't want to say it's not going to be as good as this. You've pulled this in some really interesting directions, Sam. But the next episode is a look at a band. I wanted to look at a band that I know a lot about without ever having actually spent a lot of time listening to. So next episode, we're going to find out some facts and some fun stuff about the band Echo and the Bunnymen.
Cool.
So if you like Echo and the Bunnymen, we just like learning dumb facts and stuff, then tune in next time. We're probably going to aim for once a month, because obviously these take quite a lot more work than us just sitting down and talking shit. But please let us know what you think of it in the comments. Like, subscribe, and if you've never listened to Beat Motel before and you enjoyed this, don't bother looking at the back episodes.
Maybe there's one like 2 episodes ago about post interwar history.
Interwar history music was good.
Yeah.
That was a good one. Right. Until the next time, I'm going to say a goodbye, and I'm going to pick something from the soundboard at random to see if it works as a bit of closing music. Shall I do that? Because normally we just sort of mumble and disappear. Here we go. That's the perfect ending music for Beat Motel, isn't it? Yeah. Oh God, I'm gonna try and remember that next time. Okay, I really am gonna go now. Bye bye.